Wishing you all a very blissful and Krishna conscious 2025 ahead. As Prabhu said correctly, in one sense, it is just the beginning of a year based on Western calculations, but Krishna is known as Samanjas, and Samanjas means the source of all opportunities. Therefore, devotees find any opportunity to make a celebration of remembering Krishna. And that is why we are all here today. And it's so nice to see all the devotees, and it's so inspiring to be in Sadhu Sangha. We'll speak a little bit on a topic that I was reading about and reflecting on yesterday. And at that time, Prabhu had actually sent me a message. And I thought that, I was reading this section of Bhagavatam, and Prabhu had raised the point of, giving me this service. And I thought this is Krishna's way of keeping me engaged. So whatever that I was studying and reading, I will just share it with you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Nastapraeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki, Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Gaura Premanande. Actually, one of the very important topics that run in Bhagavatam, and it runs in a very subtle manner, and it is shown by so many devotees in Bhagavatam, is this point of Krishna Prema, love of God. From the very start of Bhagavatam, you will find in the purports of Bhagavatam that Prabhupada is not shy, and neither is he hesitant to state a very important point for us. Very early on in Bhagavatam, even Bhagavatam itself is not shy to present to us what should be the goal of life. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yator bhakti radok saje ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. So nicely it is stated in the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, that actually we all have so many different dharmas, and that is true. We are fathers, mothers, sons, daughters. We have so many different workspaces and vocations that we have, and every day there is some duty for us. These are all considered dharmas, and yet Bhagavatam insists right at the very beginning that you and I may have so many different dharmas, but we are all connected, and we are all on the denomination, right, of one paro dharma. And that paro dharma is actually considered the highest dharma for mankind. And that is to render devotional service to Krishna. Yator bhaktir adoksaje. It's 2025 today. And it is very important for us to take stock of the fact that no matter how much time we spend in devotional service, we should never lose sight of the goal of devotional service. Sometimes we become so used to something that we continue doing it because it has become sometimes even ritualistic. We have to chant our rounds, we have to read, we must offer food to Krishna, we must attend the programs. There's a lot of musts. But all these activities, we can lose sight. All these activities, we can easily lose enthusiasm if we lose sight of why we are doing these activities. This is very important for us. Every time a ship is sailing in a certain way, right? What happens is the captain will set a course, and they will put longitude, latitude, and with that, every day the ship is moving in a certain direction. Now, you may come up to the deck of the ship and see the beautiful scenery of the open sea and talk to people whom you know. And after a while, if you're not careful, you will think that the goal of life at that point of time is just to be on the ship. It's very easy to fall into that trap. But the captain is very particular because every day in logbooks, right, as ships are moving, they are very particular to start the day knowing where they are headed. And at the end of the day, they make sure that they are headed in that direction. That is what Bhagavatam is doing for us. Bhagavatam is like a spiritual compass. Every day, if we study Bhagavatam, and every day, if we reset and reaffirm what should be our goal, then whatever activities that we do arising from devotional service, we will not lose taste for it, neither will we lose enthusiasm for it. And the reason why this Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo verse is very important is because not only does Vyasadeva say that the duty of each one of us is actually to render devotional service to Krishna, but how that devotional service should be done is very important. It should be ahaituki apratihata, which means it must actually be unmotivated. And therefore, the consequence of unmotivated devotional service will actually be uninterrupted devotional service. Sometimes in our devotional life, we start off reading Bhagavatam very regularly. And then after a while, so many things happen and we lose the momentum. Sometimes we wake up for Mangalarati in January because it's 2025 and we're very happy. By February, we have lost steam. And sometimes we are on, sometimes we are off. It's very possible. Sometimes we ask ourselves, why is my devotional service being interrupted in this manner? Why is it that when I start something, I cannot sustain it? And the reason is actually that we must always search in our hearts, what is our motive for performing the devotional service? Why are we going to the temple? What are we saying before the deities? Why are we reading Bhagavatam? Are we reading Bhagavatam because everybody else is reading Bhagavatam and I have to catch up? Are we reading Bhagavatam because there's societal pressure within the devotee community that I also must read Bhagavatam? If that is the reason, then there is motivation apart from serving Krishna. It is to serve ourselves, our name, our fame, so many other things. When that happens, it is guaranteed from the pages of Bhagavatam that our bhakti cannot be uninterrupted. So always remember, we must always inspect what is the motivation for us to come and hear Bhagavatam. Is it because we are here today attending Bhagavatam? Because Ambrish Maharaj has said we must all attend Bhagavatam? Or he advertised it and well, we have to keep up with the attendance and we have to turn up. What is the reason for us to do this? When Prabhu sent me a message yesterday and asked me if I could take Bhagavatam, I wanted to question, why am I going to take Bhagavatam class today? Why? Is it because Prabhu has invited me and I'm very happy because I have an audience? Or is it because it will help me in my spiritual service to the Lord? That is very important. Helping us in spiritual service is good, but that service must ultimately be for the Lord in order for it to be complete. You see? So, therefore, Shastras tell us something very beautiful, that if we perform this devotional service in a pure manner, pure means in our heart, we simply want to satisfy Krishna and the Vaishnavas. And by studying Bhagavatam, we hope that we will become proper instruments and relish and serve Krishna and the Vaishnavas. That is the goal of our life. And the test of this is given in the last line of this shloka. Yayatma suprasidati. Only by performing this devotional service, unmotivated and uninterrupted, then only Bhagavatam says, can our Atma, can we really become self-satisfied? Self-satisfied. It's so important to be self-satisfied because normal satisfaction is where we depend on others to make us satisfied. And that is a very dangerous expectation in this world, is it not? Because the moment the wife expects the husband to satisfy him or her, and vice versa, at some point there will be expectation. And where there is expectation, invariably there will be disappointment. So therefore, if we want to become self-satisfied, we should now understand one very important thing, which actually forms the subject matter or the topic at hand. Our sastras tell us that this love of God, this ahaituki apratihata, this devotional service to Krishna, is not something unnatural. Neither is it something where you and I have to go outside and we have to source for it somewhere. and then we have to bring it into our hearts. No, we don't have to. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think it's Madhya Leela, 22nd chapter 107, 22nd chapter 107 verse. Very important. This shloka is given so nicely in that particular part of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoya Shravanadi Shuddhe Chitte Karoe Udoya. And the meaning is very beautiful. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of all living entities. This is the first point we have to take today, into the new year. That actually, not just love for Krishna. This is beautiful. Prabhupada translates it as Krishna Prema. Krishna Prema is love of Krishna in the word-to-word transliteration. But when Prabhupada puts it in the translation, he uses the word pure love of Krishna. See how important it is. He doesn't just say it is Krishna Prema. Krishna Prema means pure love of Krishna. It is eternally established in the hearts of the living entities. And then it is stated, it is not something to be gained from another source. We don't have to go to any other source to receive this pure love of Krishna. But how do we then manifest this pure love of Krishna? It is manifested when the heart is purified by hearing and by chanting. Only by hearing and chanting can we actually awaken this love. In other words, this pure love of Krishna is sleeping inside every living entity. It is asleep. And sometimes we feel it, depending on our devotional service, and sometimes we don't feel it, again, depending on our devotional service. Imagine for those living entities who may not even understand what devotional service is, that doesn't mean they don't have pure love of God. Please remember that. Sometimes as devotees, it's so easy to become proud. Only we have Krishna Prema in our hearts. Everybody else does not. They don't have it. But it's not true. Pure love of Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of living entities. That means every single one of us, we already have love of God. For me, as I was reading this yesterday, it was such a revelation because every time you read this verse, it is so merciful of Krishna that he has already stored a gem in our heart. And all we have to do is to uncover it. It's like a kind father who leaves his wealth for his sons and daughters, but he buries it in the corner of the house in a courtyard. And just before he leaves, hey, by the way, you're not poor. There is enough money to take care of you. It's already there. You just have to dig for it. And the sons and the daughters need to look for it, but it is there. So in the same way, love of God is buried in our heart, but how we awaken it is very important. And it can be done exactly as what we are doing in this forum. We are hearing about Krishna, and when we speak about Krishna, there is Kirtan. When we hear about Krishna, there is also Kirtan. This is a very important point that we must remember. So then the question is, why is it that all of us have love of God inside, but so often we are doing everything except expressing that love? What happens? What is that barrier, right, that is between us and discovering the love of God? So yesterday I was reading in the 11th canto this very wonderful episode of this beautiful lady, who thought that she could serve and satisfy all other men. And in doing so, she could satisfy herself. And her name is Pingala. Many of us would have read and heard about her actually. She's a very famous personality in Bhagavatam because she represents something that's very important for us. Now, there is a deep connection between the verse that we just spoke about, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, and the pastime and the story of Pingala. Let us try to understand that today. It'll be very nice. So it is stated in Bhagavatam that in the city of Videha, right, long time ago, there lived a lady known as Pingala. Now, what she tried to do was, instead of just being satisfied being who she was, she felt that she could provide and receive pleasure from other men. And she thought by doing that, she would get money from them, they would also please her, and she would please them. And in doing so, she would actually become happy. So she thought, Ye Yatma Suprasidati was to be obtained in this manner. So in this way, she passed her life for many, many years this way. But Bhagavatam tells us there came a time, for all of us, there comes a time when we all become a bit old, isn't it? Some of us become a bit old, some of us become very old, right? But eventually we all become old. So it so came that even though Pingala was such a beautiful maiden and she was the source of attraction for so many others, it came one day that she was standing outside the doorway. And that night she was standing there, showing herself to the world how beautiful I am. Except that she became very perplexed because so many people passed by and no one stopped to gaze at her beauty. And she started thinking, why is it that nobody is looking at me today? Why is it that no one seems to be attracted to me today? And why is it that no one wants to be satisfied by me so that I can also derive satisfaction from them? She started thinking this way. She was also anxious, Bhagavatam says, because her financial situation was very tight. And she stood in the streets and at the doorway, and she studied the faces of all the people passing by. And she would look at them and say, oh, maybe this gentleman has money. Maybe he will pay the price, and maybe he will come and enjoy my company for a while. Many men came by, and many men went. And as the night progressed, her hopes, right, which were very high at the beginning, began to diminish. And Bhagavatam tells us that Pingala became increasingly distressed and very anxious. And you know something, even the most best looking person in the world, when they become anxious, they become depressed, Bhagavatam tells us when you become morose, your face dries up literally. And no matter how good looking you are, if you don't have internal happiness, that beauty on your face is very artificial. And therefore, that was also what Pingala started experiencing. She then began to realize that the men were no longer looking at her because inwardly in her heart, she herself did not have any self satisfaction. Sometimes we want to make others happy. That's very natural. But if you don't have that happiness, what can you give someone? My Guru Maharaj used to say, if you have $5 in your pocket, how can you give me $6? You can't, isn't it? Because you only have $5. So we are only capable of giving that which we actually have in our current possession. And Pingala was losing her beauty. She had lost her luster because she had become older. And as our bodies deteriorate, we are no longer very attractive. That is a fact. Very often, we are the only ones thinking when we look at the mirror that I still look all right. Little bit of hair is still there. It's white, but I look distinguished. But nobody else has that same opinion of us. And so, in that way, it took Pingala some time in that night, but she became morose. She became very dried up, and she was filled with anxiety. And she was most disappointed, Bhagavatam says, because whatever expectations that she had, they were all not met. Bhagavatam uses two words, failed expectation. And in that moment where she found that no one could satisfy her, and she realized that for years, all the people I satisfied, today, where are they? They're not coming back to take care of me. They don't even care who I am. And as she thought that way, Bhagavatam tells us that she became disgusted with her material condition. She became tired of who she was and what she was trying to do. And she began to experience a very important quality for a devotee. She began to experience indifference and detachment. Two qualities, indifference and detachment. They're very close, they're like cousins actually. When you are indifferent to something, it doesn't mean you are callous. This is very important, Prabhus and Matajis. Sometimes we think, oh, I become a devotee. I want to be detached from my family. Detachment is one thing, it's a very important principle in Krishna consciousness. But detachment should never be an abdication of your duty or callousness. That is not detachment. Very, very important, right? We must perform whatever duties that we have. And when we perform them, we should understand who we are in relation to that activity. Then we will become detached. Sometimes Krishna is very kind. Krishna slaps us through Maya Devi. Maya Devi very often slaps us, isn't it? In 2024, I'm sure if you write down all the slaps you got from Maya, you'll find that she was slapping you more. Sometimes Krishna, through the agency of Maya, is very merciful. And whatever that we want, we think we need it or we deserve it, or we think as devotees we demand it. but Krishna slaps us. And we come to the ground and we realize, oh, I thought I was so great, but I'm nothing really. So actually, Pingala experienced all of this because there she was, and she became very disgusted with her material situation, and she started experiencing indifference and detachment. And you know what Bhagavatam tells us? The moment she started feeling that detachment, happiness arose in her mind. Happiness. Now, up till that point, even though love of God, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoya, even though love of God was in her heart, because of her expectation of wanting to be satisfied and wanting to satisfy everyone else except Krishna, she could not feel that love of God in her heart. That was the barrier. That was the mud. That was the dirt that was covering this love of God. So, but when Pingala experienced detachment, when she looked at her life in a very philosophical and very perceptive way, then she began to experience some form of happiness. Another example is also given in this area of Bhagavatam in the 11th chapter, 11th canto. The Avadut, right? He is telling the Brahmana that there are 24 gurus. Pingala is one of the gurus. There's another guru he speaks about, and that's the guru known as the hawk. Then he gave the story of the hawk. One time there was a hawk that picked up, food, and it started flying very high to get on a tree so that it can sit there and take and eat the meat. But the moment it started flying, all the other hawks, they started pestering and harassing this hawk because they wanted that meat. And this hawk was holding on. The more they tried to take it away, the more the hawk tried to hold on to it. And eventually he became so distressed that finally, in a moment of detachment, the hawk said, where am I getting happiness? This meat is supposed to give me happiness, but it has brought more problems than actually initially I thought it would be. So instead of solving the problem, I have actually added problems to it. So what did he say? The solution is very simple. Let me drop the meat. And halfway through in the air, the hawk just dropped it, and all the other hawks left him and went for the meat. And the hawk experienced a moment of happiness and peace. You see? So we will also be faced and challenged by these moments when we have become very attached to something. It could be something that appears to be devotional, but we have become so attached to it, we think that only we can do that. Sometimes I may take up a service. Supposing I take up a service of giving Bhagavatam. Now I demand every Sunday, Amrish Prabhu, you must slot me in. The moment you don't slot me in, I become very unhappy, and I don't talk to you, I don't talk to everyone. Now, it appears to be that the activity is very spiritual, but my approach to it is very material. You see? So when that happens, Krishna Prema, which is in the heart, which should be awakened when we are doing Bhagavatam, is actually covered by the dirt of expectation. Now I expect that I've been called on 2025, 1st January, and now I have to be called again. That is dangerous. The hawk gave up that and became peaceful. Pingala gave up that, and she also became peaceful. There is a very interesting Sanskrit proverb. Disappointment gives rise to the greatest satisfaction. Very interesting, huh? Disappointment gives rise to the greatest satisfaction. Normally we think disappointment means dissatisfaction, but the Sanskrit word says that. And it is very true of Pingala. She had dedicated her entire life to satisfying the desires of others. And in doing so, she engaged her mind, her body, and words in the service of others. And she completely forgot that actually her mind, her body, and words were meant for the service of the Supreme Lord. And where is He? He is actually in the heart. Sarvasya chaham hriddhi sannivishto. Isn't it 15:15 of Bhagavad Gita? Krishna declares, Arjuna, I am actually in the heart of every living entity. So Krishna is in the heart of every living entity, and Krishna Prema is in the heart of every living entity. Because where Krishna is, there is always Krishna Prema. So Krishna is in our hearts. He was in Kamsa's heart. He was in Hiranyakashipu's heart. He was in Hiranyaksha's heart. He was also in Pingala's heart. And yet for years, because Pingala did not serve Krishna, therefore love of God was not apparent. So the very important takeaway is that until we come to the platform of realizing who are we actually serving, that service will actually naturally bring detachment from everything material. It is an automatic thing that comes. If you start stringing flowers as garlands for Krishna, you are using a talent for Krishna. And very automatically, whatever other attachments you have, at the point when you're doing something for Krishna, the love of God awakens and it pushes aside all the other dirt that is in the heart. So Pingala chants a beautiful prayer now. She's standing on the doorway and now she feels the wave of detachment. She feels the rising of happiness in her heart. And now she chants a beautiful prayer, 11:8:31 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Shantam samippe ramanam rati pradam vitta pradam nityam imam vihayaha akamadam dukkha bhayadi shoka moha pradam tucchamaham bhaje ajnaha. It's a very beautiful verse. And she speaks very, very candidly. Her words are very strong, but they are not meant for anyone else. They're actually meant for her. And see what she says. She says, I am such a fool. This is the starting point of Krishna consciousness. Her humility. By speaking that way, she accepted that she had been expecting too much in life, and all from the wrong sources. So there's always a connection between accepting and expecting. In expectation, there will always be disappointment. Because the problem is not others actually. The problem is very often those who expect. It's very hard to calibrate our expectation. If you give something too good to someone, the expectation will reach such a height that you cannot satisfy them or they become unhappy with you over the smallest things. If you don't give them anything also, they are not happy. If you give them so much also, they want more. Either way, you are defeated. This is the nature of the material world. So she says, I am such a fool that I've given up the service of that person who, being eternally situated within my heart, is actually most dear to me. Rati Pradam. Rati means one who is the object of love. Huh? So therefore, now she realizes that most dear person is the Lord of the universe. He is the person who gives me real love and happiness. You know, it is stated by Prabhupada in a purport. It is in the third canto, I believe. I remember the verse. Na karhinchin mad paraha shantarupe nang shanti no me nimisho le dihetihi. In that shloka, in 325, I think, of Srimad Bhagavatam, I forget the verse, I can always find the reference. In that shloka, Prabhupada in the purport says, if one accepts Krishna as a child, for example, that child will never die and he will always serve you as a parent. If you accept Krishna as your best friend, that best friend will never cheat you because anybody else in the world, whether you like it or not, by nature, we are conditioned. We will do something that you will become unhappy with. But Krishna is perfect. He will always be the best friend. So now Pingala is reflecting that most dear person was in my heart all this time, but I was looking externally for all other people to give me love. Nitya Krishna, right? This Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. This is the point she's saying. Although he is in my own heart, I have completely neglected him. Instead, I have ignorantly served insignificant men who can never satisfy my real desires and who simply brought me unhappiness, fear, anxiety, lamentation, and illusion. 5 things. So 5 things will happen to us when we do not connect with Krishna. When our connection with Krishna is lost, or if it is jaded, or it is covered by our material expectations, then what will happen is we will have unhappiness, we will have fear and anxiety always. We will lament because everything we have come to expect will leave us eventually. And it will keep us in a state of illusion. Illusion. So you see, this one verse, 11.8.31, it's so powerful. We often ask if Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema is really there. What is it is there? What is the barrier between us? Pingala brings it up in 11.8.31. And she uses her very own example. In life, I'm sure you must have faced this situation. We are running after so many objects of desire, thinking they will give us happiness. But the people who really take care of us at home or who are with us day in, day out, we take them for granted. Even in material world, we do that, isn't it? Those who are there day in, day out, we lose interest in them actually, and we forget that. But someone just comes, we put them up on the pedestal, and they are very great sources of enjoyment for us. In the same way, Krishna is like that too. Krishna is a witness on the tree, as Bhagavad Gita and Puranas and Upanishads tell us. One bird is eating the fruit, one bird is witnessing the other bird. If that bird who's eating the fruit turns to the other bird and seeks direction, that bird can guide this bird. But because we don't turn to Krishna, even though he is in our heart, Sarvasya Chaham, Riddhi Sannivishto, but because we are covered by illusion, we are covered by expectation, we are covered by sense gratification, we cannot conclusively realize and taste Krishna Prema. So now what did Pingala do? Pingala said, men provide sense gratification for women and women provide sense gratification for men. But they all have a beginning and an end. They all have a beginning and end. They are all temporary, and so am I. Why am I running after that which is temporary when I should be running after that which will never leave me? Isn't that really common logic? Good common sense, actually. Why are we running after something that will not be lasting forever? Then our happiness will also go with it. The moment it ends, our happiness also ends. And then Pingala said, I stubbornly hoped to enjoy this material world. I think that verse is 11.8.37. I stubbornly hoped to enjoy this material world, but somehow detachment has arisen in my heart. Therefore, this is because Krishna must be pleased with me. Without even knowing it, I must have performed some action to satisfy him. Sometimes devotees ask, Prabhu, I didn't do so much actually, but suddenly by Krishna's mercy, I'm able to do so much of service for Krishna. So how did that happen? Bhagavatam gives us the answer. Because Krishna is in our heart and Krishna is really, really caring for us, right? And day and night, he is thinking of how to bring the living entities back to him. The moment Krishna sees an opportunity to actually teach a living entity a lesson through the agency of Maya, through the slaps of Maya, he will do it. And the living entity wakes up, just like Pingala woke up also. That is why Bhagavatam tells us that sometimes when devotees endure difficulties, they are not considered to be negative. Don't ever feel that because I'm going through difficulty, my devotional service is going, it's because I'm a bad devotee. Don't become discouraged in the face of difficulty. The whole of Bhagavatam, Prabhus and Mataji, every devotee faced difficulty. Find me a devotee in Bhagavatam who took an easy walk in the park and had a great time with no problems. There is no devotee like that in Bhagavatam. From start to end, Bhagavatam is full of problems that devotees faced. And somehow they came out of it by Krishna's mercy, right? In fact, if Bhagavatam did not have these examples, you and I wouldn't read Bhagavatam. Because the truth is, we are facing difficulty every day. And what will we get from Bhagavatam if in Bhagavatam everybody has no problems in life? That's why Bhagavatam is the most relevant scripture for this day and age, because it puts us on the battlefield of life. So Pingala was standing there in the evening. She had not chanted Krishna's names for years. She had not even thought about Krishna. But at the moment when she became disgusted with her material situation and she realized the futility and the temporary nature of it, Krishna in the heart, as Paramatma, he awakened in her this mood of detachment. And when that mood of detachment came, Pingala expressed gratitude that I cannot be the one who's expressing this feeling. It must be coming from the greatness and mercy of Krishna. This is how we grow in devotional service. When something difficult happens to us, we don't see that, oh, it is very difficult, and therefore, I want to leave devotional service. In the first canto, 19th chapter, I think it's either the 14th or 15th verse, so nicely Parikshit Maharaj says, that kindly come. He tells all the sages that Krishna, right, has very kindly and graciously overtaken me in the form of a Brahmana's curse. Imagine that. He says, Krishna has kindly overtaken me, graciously overtaken me. And how has he come? He has come in the form of Shringi Brahmana's curse. So Parikshit Maharaj did not see Shringi Brahmana. Everybody saw Shringi Brahmana. But Parikshit Maharaj saw Krishna. He saw Krishna. So Pingala did not see this situation as I've lost money, I've wasted time. No, she saw the hand of Krishna. When Gajendra was trapped in the jaws of the crocodile, after everybody tried to help him, his wives left him, his children had to leave him, his generals tried to save him, none of them could save him. At that point of time, he experienced detachment in his heart. And that was Krishna in his heart speaking to him. And at that point of time, because of Krishna's mercy, he could remember all the prayers that he chanted when he was Indradyumna Maharaj in his previous life. How could he do that? Sarvasya chaham hriddhi sannivishto. How could he do that? Nitya siddha Krishna prema. Because love of God is already inside. You just have to find the right key to unlock the door. That is the key. If you take the wrong key, you will never unlock that door. But if you find the right key, you will unlock it. And the right key for Pingala was detachment. And the moment she felt that, she then said one last point. She said, material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness. And freedom from such desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest happiness. What a nice point, actually. And so what did she do? She stopped standing in the doorway. Pingala became very sober. She just smiled and she became very peaceful. She closed the door that night. She went inside. She sat down and she began to meditate and chant the names of the Lord. In that way, she became very peaceful. You remember Narada Muni once met Mrigari, the hunter, in Chaitanya Leela, right? It's stated there. Narada Muni saw this hunter Mrigari mercilessly killing and maiming animals. And then he preached to him Krishna consciousness and he awakened Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema in his heart. Mrigari became a very, very good devotee. But before he became a great devotee, Narada told him, stop killing animals. Great sin, right? If you keep doing that, you will never have the key to unlock Krishna Prema. Stop it. You know what Mrigari said that was very important? He said, if I stop it, who will maintain me? That's my job. I have to do it, right? You won't maintain me. I have to maintain my family. And at that point of time, Srila Prabhupada writes a very nice statement. The source of income is not the source of your maintenance. I'll repeat that again. The source of your income is not the source of your maintenance. What a nice point. And Prabhupada says, Krishna maintains us. You may earn money, but that money doesn't maintain us. It is Krishna who maintains us. Therefore, Pingala may have thought, if I don't earn money from this man, how will I survive? But because love of God awakened in her heart, she had faith that Krishna will somehow or another take care of her. And he will provide the means of actually continuing in her livelihood, in whatever form, in whatever way. This is the faith a devotee has. So second takeaway is that the moment we start experiencing detachment in our heart, love of God awakens. After getting this detachment in our heart, we express gratitude. That is what she expressed. And the moment there is gratitude in the heart, then there is faith that even though I may have to give up this way of living, I know that my source of my income is not the source of my maintenance. He will maintain me. And true enough, because Mrigari stopped killing these animals, when the neighbors heard he had become a sadhu, you know what the neighbors did? They would bring food. They brought rice, they brought vegetables, and they encouraged him to also grow his vegetables and his food. And eventually, Mrigari became a very saintly personality. So you see, there is no loss, Prabhus and Matajis, when we try to use the right key to unlock that door so that we are able to remember Krishna in that way. This is very important. One thing that Pingala teaches us, and this is a very important point to wind up our time together, is this point. In 11.249 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the nature of this world is given. If we can understand the nature of this world, then we will be ready to unlock the door of love of God. It is nicely stated, Dehendriya prana manodiyamyo janmapyaya shud bayatarsha kriche samsara dharme avimuyamanaha smritya hari bhagavata pradhanaha. And the meaning is very nice. Within this material world, our bodies, our material body, they will always give us trouble because they are subject to birth and decay. The word that is used in Bhagavatam is not death. Death means there's no more problems already, isn't it? You're dead, right? Dead man doesn't feel anything. But when your body is decaying, then you feel something actually. Think about it. When you're dead, you don't feel anything. You've moved on. But when your body is there and you're deteriorating every day, some problem, blood pressure, cholesterol, this, that, now your body is decaying. Then you have problems. So the first thing that happens in this world is whatever you do, this material body that is born will decay. Second, this life air, prana, it is always going to be harassed from the day you're born by hunger and thirst. Isn't it true? We take it for granted. But if I were to speak for 3-4 hours and it eats into your dinner time, you're going to get out of this because you have to eat. Otherwise, your prana will be harassed by hunger and thirst. So therefore, nobody is free of that. Third point, Bhagavatam says, the mind is always anxious. The nature of the mind in this material world, you realize, is that it is anxious. And it can become anxious over the smallest, most unimportant things. It can. When I was younger, I used to think my anxiety was over big things. As I grow older, I realized my anxiety is over the small things. I used to see my parents when they were old. Simple things like locking the door, unlocking the door became source of anxiety. Did I lock the door? Go and check. Did I unlock the door? Now, today I just realized I told my son, did you check whether we locked the door? And he said, why are you so paranoid? We locked the door. And I realized, hey, I'm becoming just like my parents also. So anxiety is starting. And sometimes we don't realize we are anxious over the smallest things. For others, it is very small. For us, it is a mountain. So the mind is always anxious. Now I'm anxious that I should finish in time. That is my anxiety. I can't help it, but it's there now. I'm looking at my watch, I'm looking at you, and I'm anxious. So you see, the mind is always anxious. Then Bhagavatam says, this intelligence that we have, which is supposed to be very useful, but it has a problem in this material world. Intelligence hankers for that which cannot be obtained. I really like this point. The intelligence runs after that which actually we cannot obtain. Sometimes we see someone very, very handsome. My Guru Maharaj used to say, when you're young, you see someone very beautiful, but you don't see your own face in the mirror. And you think that person will be very attracted to you. Then you think you're very intelligent and you run after that person. But only she knows how good looking or not good looking you are. And you don't even have the intelligence to realize that. And you run after that which cannot be obtained. And it is true. Very often we set a plan or we set goals, but it cannot be obtained in this world. Pingala thought that she could derive happiness all her life from these men. But the intelligence was blocked because there was no awakening of Krishna consciousness. So when we awaken Krishna consciousness, mind becomes less anxious. Intelligence runs after that which can be obtained, which is Krishna Prema. This body doesn't become so anxious about decay because we accept that it is part of our life. We don't expect that it will not be there. And this life air, which is harassed by hunger and thirst, we learn to control our senses so that we know when we should eat and when we should drink. And then ultimately, Bhagavatam tells us that when we are harassed by all these different things in our life, imagine living 50, 60, 70 years like this. Then the result is all our senses become krichay. Krichay means exhausted. By the time we reach a certain age, our senses are very exhausted with the constant struggle in material nature. But in the last two lines of this shloka, Bhagavatam declares how to come out of this. A person who is not bewildered, avimuya, who is not bewildered by the inevitable miseries of this material world, a person who accepts instead of expecting, that person will remain aloof. What is another word for aloof? Detached. He will remain aloof from all of these difficulties. And how does he remain aloof? Simply by remembering the lotus feet of Krishna. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. And that's what you're doing for the last 45 minutes. And that's why your prana is not harassed. Your body is not decaying because it's now in good condition to hear Krishna. Your mind is not anxious because you're very peaceful. It is resting on Krishna. Your intelligence is sharp to hear about Krishna. And your senses don't feel exhausted. It is towards the end of the day. But I'm looking at all your faces, especially from New Zealand, and your faces are full of tejas. You are looking bright. You're not looking dull. Why? Because Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. You have unlocked, you have used the right key and you are able to unlock. That person is known as Bhagavata Pradhana. Bhagavata Pradhana. So this verse is very important for us. I find this verse is a very important verse every day to remember the state of our material existence. It awakens us, just like Pingala was awakened. So expectations, a few points to conclude. Expectation destroys the peace of mind, and expectation is the greatest barrier for Krishna Prema to reveal itself. And expectation is very often the younger cousin to greed and pride. When you expect that people should treat you in a certain way, you are greedy for it. And when they don't do that, your pride becomes affected. Your relationships are destroyed. You become very anxious. If you are expecting name and fame, if you're expecting puja and pratishta from people, you will definitely be disappointed. If someone forgets to say Hare Krishna Prabhu to you, and you expected they should say Hare Krishna to you, you'll become disappointed. Then you'll say, next time I won't say Hare Krishna to him. In this way, where is Krishna Prema? Krishna Prema is just thrown out of the window because we are just expecting all these things. And devotees can also get caught by it. Some devotees come and tell me, Prabhu, I'm reading Bhagavatam. Therefore, because I'm studying Bhagavatam, I expect I should have Krishna Prema. See, in there also there is expectation. By studying Bhagavatam, we are now putting demands on Krishna. Krishna, because I'm studying Bhagavatam, you have to do all this for me. Because I'm doing deity dressing, I expect that I should have all this from devotional service. But that expectation is not the mood of a Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. A devotee accepts whatever that is given as Krishna's mercy. You remember when Sudama went to see Krishna from Porbandar to Dwarka? Did he ask Krishna at all for anything? Nothing. And Krishna also was transcendently mischievous. He also never asked, you have come so far. Is there something you want? He also didn't ask. I always used to think, why didn't Krishna ask? But then Sudama gives the reason in his mind as he's walking away from Dwarka in 1081:16. He says very nicely, Kwaham daridra papiyan, Kwa Krishna Sriniketana, Brahma Bandhur iti smaham, Bahu Byam Parirambitaha. It's a very beautiful point. He says, who am I? Sudama saying, who am I? I'm just a sinful, poor friend of a Brahmana, not even Brahmana. I'm just a friend of a Brahmana. And who is Krishna? Krishna is the Lord, Sriniketana, full of Aishwarya, all six opulences. Even though he is so great and I am nothing, nevertheless, he has embraced me with his own arms. Did Sudama have any expectation as he walked into Dwarka? Nothing. And because he had no expectation, his love of God was awakened. And by the time he came back to Porbandar and he turned the corner, he saw a palace. And he thought, oh, I must have turned the wrong corner. He saw Lakshmi Devi walking towards him. And he thought, why is Lakshmi Devi here? And he realized that's my wife. And she's dressed very nicely. And that's my house. To those who don't expect anything, Krishna always will protect us. Whatever that we need, yoga kshemam vahami aham. Whatever that you lack, he will give. And whatever that you have, he will preserve. He preserved love of God in Pingala's heart, even though it was dormant for years. But at the right time, when she experienced detachment, as super soul in the heart of Pingala, he awakened love of God for him, actually. So you see, Krishna really is our friend. Never think that he's just sitting inside in yoga nidra position, not bothered. No, Krishna is very active in our heart, but we must equally reciprocate that activity with him. That is very important. That is why in 3.542 of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a deep connection between detachment and devotion. Devotion and detachment. Now, that verse is really nice. It is chanted by the Devatas, 3.542. Yat Shraddhaya Shrutavatya cha Bhaktya Samrijyamane Hridaye Avadhayaha Jnanena Vairagya Balena Dhira Vraje Matate Angri Saroja Pitam. And the meaning is so beautiful. It is stated there, simply by hearing about your lotus feet with eagerness and devotion, and by meditating upon them within the heart, one at once becomes enlightened with knowledge. And on the strength of detachment, one becomes pacified. See that point? We can only become pacified in this world. Our hearts will become peaceful when we develop the quality of detachment on the platform of devotion. Detachment on its own can be very artificial, Prabhus and Matajis. Sometimes, we get angry with someone and suddenly we become detached from everything. But that is artificial detachment. No more service. I become very detached now. I'm sadhu. No, I'm going to walk out. That is also detachment, but it is false detachment. You remember the story of Aesop's fable? There was this fox that tried to reach for the grapes. It was very sweet grapes. He was trying to reach, couldn't get it. Then suddenly he became sadhu. Oh, I'm detached now. You know why? Because the grapes are sour. That's why I'm going to walk away. That detachment is artificial detachment. Detachment without devotion is material. But detachment on the strength of devotion, we don't hate the grapes. We just realize after jumping and jumping that Krishna doesn't want us to have the grapes. That's how we should accept it. We try to get the grapes, but don't condemn the grapes because we can't get it. Walk away by realizing that actually Krishna knows that the grapes are not meant for me. Sudama said, Krishna knows that if he gave me too much riches, I'll become too much attached to it. Therefore, he didn't give me anything. You see, Parikshit Maharaj said, Krishna came in the form of a Brahmana's curse because he knew I was very attached to my kingdom. That's why I came out of it. See how the devotee thinks? The devotee thinks devotion with detachment. Detachment on the grounds of devotion. And this is how Krishna Prema will finally open. And the door, once it is open, we must continuously cultivate this mood. We cannot take for granted that Krishna Prema has awakened. Now I can do whatever I want. No. It requires constant watering. Our devotional creeper requires constant watering. There is no plant in the world where you can pour water today and 1 year later you pour water. There won't be a plant at that time. Devotion is the same. We have to do it every day. And that is why I would request you by ending today that the best way to water this devotional creeper is the serious study and practice of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is what we should do. Everything else may come and go, but never neglect Srimad Bhagavatam. All that we have spoken about has all come from Bhagavatam. It has not been plucked from the air. It is all coming from Bhagavatam. How will we understand detachment if we did not understand Pingala? How will we understand how Krishna is in our heart, but there are barriers between us and him? How will we understand all of this until and unless we study and read Bhagavatam? And do two things for Bhagavatam. Read it on your own. That is always very important. Sitting down and being with Bhagavatam is your appointment with Krishna, is your time with Krishna. Never lose that time with Krishna. Then come together like you're doing now. Discuss Bhagavatam. Sometimes in Singapore, we have this read and relish program. We call it R&R. Everywhere else is rest and recreation, right? But for us, it is read and relish. So small groups everywhere in Singapore. Devotees just come together daily, right? Either on Zoom or they meet each other after work. They sit down and they discuss Bhagavatam. Everyone's at a certain point of Bhagavatam. So you find someone who is like-minded. Sit down and study Bhagavatam. As you study, you will read. As you read, you will relish. And as you relish, then Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. Love of God, which is already in your heart, it will awaken and you will nourish it. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Srila Gurudev ki. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Thank you, Ambrish Maharaj Prabhu, and thank you, dear devotees. So nice to see all of you and so happy to discuss Bhagavatam with you.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. It's always a pleasure to hear from you about Srimad Bhagavatam, and especially because the conviction that you have in Srimad Bhagavatam that just reflects. And the reason why I invite you to hear, to speak so that we can hear, the main reason is then I can get that enthusiasm from you about Srimad Bhagavatam. So thank you very much, Prabhuji, for inspiring all of us to read and study Srimad Bhagavatam, develop some detachment, which is the key to unlock the love for Krishna, which is there in our heart. Thank you very much.
Thank
Do you
you,
still
Prabhu.
have some time for
Yeah,
questions,
I
Prabhuji?
do. I have a few minutes.
Okay, sure. So if
Mhm.
anyone has any questions, then please raise your hand. In the meantime, while they are thinking about a question, I can ask a question, Prabhuji, if you are okay.
Yes, yes, I
Yes.
see a few hands already.
Okay, but now I am already prepared with the question. Let
You
me
go
now
ahead,
ask.
please,
Thank you,
please.
Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I think in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, we also see that that verse from Vasudeva Bhagavati. In that verse, it is mentioned that when you do devotion, then knowledge and detachment automatically comes.
Yes,
So that means devotion first, and then knowledge and detachment comes. But whereas
yes,
what we are discussing now is detachment first, and then the love of Krishna awakens in our heart. That means
yes.
we are now. Is that a contradiction, Prabhuji?
Very good point. Actually, the power of devotional service is so great that if one actually performs devotional service, then all knowledge that needs to be revealed and detachment, they should automatically come. But it is incumbent on how we perform that devotional service. If the devotional service is performed ahaituki apratihata, to that extent of purity, to that extent our quality of detachment and the quality of transcendental knowledge will be there. So that is definitely there, Prabhu. But Pingala's story is very unique because it addresses a situation where someone is not maybe a devotee or not inclined to perform devotional service. You see? So Vasudeva Bhagavati in that verse actually assumes that someone is actually performing devotional service. But what happens when many living entities are not interested in devotional service? How does Krishna make them come closer to him? He did that through Pingala to teach us that even if someone's not performing devotional service, but if he's put in a very precarious situation in life, and he develops that quality of detachment, which is actually inspired from within by the super soul, that person can actually, on the strength of detachment, move towards devotional service. And that's exactly what happened to Pingala. Why I like this is because very often I find that I may not have that devotional service firmly established. And if I don't, or if I'm speaking to someone who is a living entity who's not a devotee, how will they then come closer to Krishna if they are not inherently interested in devotional service? Then sometimes what happens is they are going through a very difficult situation in life. And when I relate Pingala as an episode to them, to make them understand that your difficulty is not in the difficulty itself, but in your expectation of how this matter should go, that brings detachment in their heart. And from that detachment eventually comes the need to understand what is the purpose of life and therefore devotional service. So Bhagavatam is so complete that not only does it give you a solution if you are a devotee, but it also gives you the possibility that if you're starting the other way around, Krishna can still bring you to devotional service. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Yeah, very, very wonderful, Prabhuji. That clarified the doubt
Yeah.
very, very completely.
No, it's
Thank
it's
you.
a it's a very good point, Thank you. So we
Thank you.
have Aparna Mataji, we have Gaurachandra Prabhu. Mataji, you can start if you have a
Oh,
question.
thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. What a wonderful class. This is just amazing. Nothing can be asked for on day one of New Year. Thank you so much. Actually, Prabhuji, I got two questions, if I may be allowed. So I can go with the first one. So one is a conceptual question, another is practical question. Which one would you like to take first?
I'll start with the
Sure.
concept.
So I will go with the conceptual one. So Prabhuji, you just sure, thanks. So Prabhuji, you beautifully explained the Pingala's concept, which I was entirely unaware about. So she became detached after achieving a climax of her expectations, right? So
Yes.
my question is the detachment in general is endowed as a result of mercy of the Lord, or is it like a deliberate attempt?
Very good point. Actually, it's a combination of both, Mataji. There must be some endeavor on the part of the living entity to process something. And when the Lord sees that there is a sincere endeavor by a living entity who's trying to understand the futility of life, the Lord reciprocates as super soul to give some direction to that person. In Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna says 4 kinds of pious people surrender to me. One of them is those who are distressed, right? Now, there are people who are distressed but never turn to Krishna. And yet there are those who are distressed who think about life and think, why should I continue this way? Then Krishna actually reacts with them, reciprocates with them, and then he brings them closer to him. So both are needed. Another important concept that is also given in 294 of Srimad Bhagavatam. You can look at the verse. 284 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Shranavataha Shraddhaya Nityam Granatascha Swachestitam. The word Granatascha Swachestitam means those who seriously study Srimad Bhagavatam and who personally endeavor to do that. When that person personally puts endeavor in it, Kalena na ati dirgena Bhagavan Vishate Vriddhi. The Lord in no time at all will actually establish himself in that person's heart. So if you look at these two concepts and study them, it will cement what is being said today. So that's the concept question.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Beautifully explained. My second question is a practical question. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, in like the canto, I don't remember the canto, but the Gajendra Moksha, like the Gajendra concept, it is said that it is hard to achieve Krishna if we are too attached to our families, right? So it is hard to find Krishna or Krishna's love if you're too engrossed with the family affairs. So Prabhuji, my question is, being a mom, obviously a busy mom, if we are serving our children or our family in an attached way, and we are serving our family in a detached way, how does the two outcome differ? So I'm cooking
Okay.
with attachment. On
Mm.
other scenario, I'm
Yeah.
cooking with a lot of detachment. How does it differ? And how does it impact my duties towards my family? Does that make sense, Prabhuji?
It does. Let's use the cooking example, shall we? Now, the cooking example is interesting. You have to cook, right? The important thing is you're cooking for Krishna. Because whatever food that you're making is actually being offered to Krishna. So in your mind, you cook for Krishna for his pleasure. And you say, Krishna, after cooking for you, I will offer you the bhoga. And what comes from you is prasad. And with that, I hope to purify my family. Because I want my children and I want my family to become purified by your mercy. So that consciousness will keep you in perfect equilibrium. Neither are you unnecessarily detached, neither are you unnecessarily attached. Because your focus is on serving the Lord. If you become a mother and you need to take care of your children, take care of them because Krishna has given them to you. They are not your property. They are gifts from Krishna. And therefore, it becomes your duty to serve them to the best of your ability. So whatever you have to do as a mother, that's your job scope. You have to discipline them. You have to chase after them. But it's all part of your duty. And the more you do your sadhana nicely, the more Krishna will give you that awareness that what you're doing is ultimately a duty. But duty doesn't mean you're cold, because you always must be a loving mother. Like we must be loving parents. Being loving doesn't mean that we are being attached. Being loving, knowing that this is all given by Krishna, is actually a sign of our gratitude to Krishna. Is that helpful, Mataji?
101% helpful, Prabhuji. This is beautiful answers. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Guru Chandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandar Pranam. Thank you so much for this class. Thank you. Now,
Thank
Prabhuji,
you, Prabhu.
my question is that we hear a lot about taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. Now, in Gopi Geet, and a lot of mention of Krishna's lotus feet. In Vrindavan Ashtakam, the gopis say that, Mother Earth, what austerities have you performed so that your footprints are marked with Krishna's, lotus feet. Now,
Yes.
when we go on meditation, obviously, lotus feet, and then we go upwards, and then we have, the navel, the Lord's chest, the arms, thighs, and the lotus face. And so my question is that, what does it, like, my understanding is that the highest meditation is like meditating on the lotus face of Krishna. Of course, the lotus feet, we hear a lot of mention. Now, is it just restricted to just meditating on the feet of Krishna, or there is more to it? Because there is a lot of mention, the whole Bhagavatam is filled with take shelter of Lord's lotus feet. Vrindavan Ashtakam is saying, Gopi Geet is saying, what exactly it is to take shelter of Lord's.
Actually, in a way, you have provided the answer because you're asking it. So you know that there is more to it, actually. But it's correct. The Lord's lotus feet are not like your feet and my feet. Our feet is just feet. That's it. It ends with that, But the Lord's lotus feet is the source of shelter for all living entities. Therefore, his lotus feet is the repository of his qualities, Prabhu. His qualities. That is why his lotus feet is transcendental. Our feet have no qualities. By looking at my feet, you don't know who I am, isn't it? But by looking and meditating at Krishna's feet and understanding how his lotus feet is described by Sastra and the great devotees, we come to understand his lotus feet is the source of his mercy. His lotus feet is the source of his beauty. And because Krishna is absolute, Prabhu, whether you meditate his lotus feet or his lotus face, ultimately you are meditating on his qualities. That is very important. So when we meditate on Krishna's lotus feet, this meditation is to remember how great Krishna is, how sweet he is, how kind he is, how compassionate he is, how full of transcendental qualities he is, and how his feet can give shelter even to those who are most fallen. That is the greatest point of Krishna's feet. So when we meditate on the Lord's feet and his face and all of his body, automatically we are actually meditating on his great qualities. And where do we get these qualities from, Prabhu? Primarily, we get them from the Sastras. And that is why Srimad Bhagavatam has so many chapters which are literally dedicated to description of the Lord's lotus feet. I quoted a verse just now, 3:542. That verse and a few verses in 3rd canto, 5th chapter, they are all about the Lord's lotus feet, and they are describing the Lord's lotus feet in so many different ways by the Devatas. You see? So when we meditate on Krishna, meditate on his qualities. And then because he's absolute, we will derive so much depth and satisfaction in remembering him. I hope that's useful, Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you to all devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Are there any other questions for Prabhuji? Okay, fine. Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Prabhu.
Devakinandan Prabhuji. That was really, really wonderful start for our ear, hearing
For
Srimad
me,
Bhagavatam from you.
uh-huh.
So,
And for me, Prabhu, for me, it's a wonderful start. You have really fixed me this afternoon to hear Bhagavatam and to study Bhagavatam. I was panicking because you gave me short notice. I was thinking, now what am I going to do? But see, Bhagavatam is so kind. Always it gives something to us, actually.
oh, there is one hand up, Prabhuji. Is that okay?
Oh,
We'll
yeah,
take
yeah. Sure, yeah, yeah. Sure,
one
sure,
more
sure.
question.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Yes, Sudanva Prabhu and
Hare
Sudharma
Krishna,
Mataji.
Prabhuji,
Hare
Dandavat Pranam.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Happy to
Thank
see you
you.
after some time.
Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture, Prabhuji. Sorry, I was looking for the hands up.
No, that's fine.
See, finally found out. Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, the whole, the lecture you were talking about
Yes.
developing detachment. So mainly develop detachment and then bhakti is going to come, the devotion is going to come. But as a practicing sadhakas, really, we say like, oh, I'm a practicing devotee, but there is no detachment, which I'm saying for myself, at least I can speak about. Like even in small things, still the attachment is there. It's not totally say like, I'm detached. Like even I can speak for myself, like when I'm taking the deities out or dress, oh, my deities are nicely dressed. So that attachment is still there in me. Like, are they nicely dressed? Like, when we making like prasadams or boga we are taking, oh, having my boga having made nice, like, am I getting comments? Like, is the tasting good? So these things are still there. It's not like though, like we are practicing devotees, even in the devotion, somehow that little attachment is always there. It's not like, no, I will say like it's not gone. So in that case, like we are not going to get the lotus feet of God at all. So if you are going to be practicing in this way, so I just want to know like how even these small things, though it is for the Lord we are doing, even in the service, there is some attachment. How can we get out of this attachment and be detached in our devotional service? Thank you, Prabhu.
Actually, the answer, Mataji, is first of all, it's very good. It's very important for devotees to acknowledge that we have challenges with detachment. I think it's a very important step. When a devotee accepts that that there are challenges to their devotion, then that devotee actually is on the path to progress. That acceptance must be there. And it's so important for us to be honest about it. Krishna loves honesty. When we're honest, I mean, for you to speak up like this with all of us, it's amazing because, I am hiding my issues of detachment, but you're openly speaking about it. So this is a very important point because if we accept that there are always challenges in devotional service, within that acceptance is Krishna's mercy. If we pray to Krishna acknowledging that we have these challenges, let us continue with our devotional service and increase the quality of our devotional service. The quality will enhance our detachment automatically, Mataji. That is very important. But because you're already speaking about it, you see, we have a saying even in material world, you cannot fix a problem if you cannot accept there is a problem, isn't it? If you're in denial or if you are not even aware that there is a problem, how will you fix a problem? But when devotees become cognizant that detachment is a lot more difficult than what we think it is, then we are on the right path. And don't worry about whether we will finally have taste or no taste. If you did not have taste, you and Prabhu will not be sitting here to hear and be serious about devotional service. So we must also be encouraged in devotional service. Whatever we are doing, have full faith. It is working. The process is working. It just takes a bit of time. That's all. Because for so many lives, we may have forgotten Krishna. And now suddenly we have remembered Krishna. And our nature in Kali Yuga is everything is instant, isn't it? Instant laddu, instant. Now you buy from supermarket, everything is instant. So we are also instant. But we don't realize so many years and lives we have forgotten Krishna. Surely we need to be patient, to grow in our devotional service. So don't be discouraged. Accept that detachment is a challenge. And because you are very sharp to know where you are attached to, then we will be very careful to avoid that. The next time it happens, we will know, okay, this is not good. I must change the way I think. And Krishna as super soul, he's not quiet. The moment he hears the endeavor, right? Aparna Mataji was asking that question. The moment he sees you are endeavoring, he will reciprocate. He'll push you forward, push you forward, push you forward. He will do that. I hope that's helpful, Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Take care and have a wonderful Krishna Conscious 2025.